I Hate Politics is a podcast about a human activity we love to hate. And this is the I Hate Politics candidate interview with Judd Ashman for mayor of Gaithersburg. I'm Sunil Dasgupta, host of I Hate Politics, a podcast about our neighborhoods, workplaces, schools, and streets, and our local governments as they function in diverse, democratic, and sometimes divided societies. As part of the show, we have conversations with local, state, and sometimes federal candidates. Rather than ask them how they stand on a multitude of issues, these conversations go in depth on a few issues. The city of Gaithersburg in Montgomery County, Maryland, holds its elections not to coincide with state and national polls, and the next election day for the city is November 4th, 2025. Gaithersburg's off-year elections are controversial. The official position is that in the off-year, city residents benefit from being able to focus solely on city issues. But critics point to the very low turnout as evidence for why the system is not working. In 2023, 4,497 votes were cast in a city of 69,000, with nearly 40,000 above the age of 18. Not all of them can vote, of course, but the comparison is still a good measure. Critics say turnout would increase if city elections were held on cycle with state and federal elections, when residents were actually focused on politics. Worth noting, having a Gaithersburg address does not necessarily mean being a resident of the city itself. The address is used outside the city proper. Registered voters in the city automatically receive ballots in the mail. This year, the process started October 3rd. Early voting is this weekend, Sunday, October 26th, at the Activity Center at Borough Park. And in-person voting on Election Day, November 4th, is also at Borough Park. The city allows same-day voter registration when voting in person, but requires ID and the ballots are provisional, which means officials check their voter eligibility during counting. This year, the mayor and 2 city council members are up for re-election. And regrettably, scheduling did not allow us to interview candidates for city council. But we do have the 2 candidates for mayor, incumbent Judd Ashman and challenger Tiffany Kelly. This is my interview with Judd Ashman. The accompanying episode, released together with this one, features Tiffany Kelly. Judd Ashman has been mayor of the city of Gaithersburg for over a decade, and before that, he was on the city council. Ashman is a local businessman who prides himself for having kept the city's tax rate lowest among all large municipalities in the entire state of Maryland, and for leading economic and housing development in the city, including the long-delayed Lake Forest Mall redevelopment. During his tenure, the state added an interchange to Interstate 270 near the city, and Montgomery County Public Schools plan to add a new high school at Crown, though they are now walking it back. He founded the Gaithersburg Book Festival, now a major stop on the East Coast Book Festival circuit. For this interview, he asked to speak on rent stabilization. Music for this episode are 2 short original piano compositions from, until recently, Kensington resident Adam Barbrow. If you want to share your music on the show or know someone else who might want to, please email us at producer@ihbpod.org. Judd Ashman, welcome to I Hate Politics.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
You are running for re-election as the mayor of Gaithersburg. You said you wanted to talk about rent stabilization. What is the problem with rent stabilization?
First, let me just acknowledge that housing affordability is a huge problem in this county. It's a problem in Gaithersburg. There are many cost burden tenants, renters, homeowners in the city of Gaithersburg. There is a housing shortage. There are a number of ways to approach housing affordability problem. Rent stabilization has the benefit of sounding great. Nobody wants anybody's rents to go up, but it has a lot of unintended consequences. And I would argue that there's no case in history where a rent stabilization regime as restrictive as the one Montgomery County adopted in 2023 has been successful. New supply stops coming online. That's what we see consistently where rent stabilization, rent control has been tried. It creates a disincentive for property owners to renovate their properties. So the quality of life for people in rent stabilized or rent controlled buildings tends to go down. Rent controlled buildings in Tacoma Park, Maryland, which has had rent control for over 40 years, you could find the same phenomenon there. And then this will result in a negative impact on property values and assessments. The result of that is there will be a decline in the tax revenue that the county has to provide the services that we all love.
If there's shortage, wouldn't the price of property be going up even with all the conditions you described?
Rent would go up for non-controlled units, but the price of buildings, no. The price would go down because the value of a resale, the value of the cash flows that come in will make the property value diminish. The assessment will go down.
People's homes, the value of the homes would increase if there was a shortage of housing.
For those lucky enough to be in a single-family home ownership situation, yes, a decline in supply could positively impact the value of your investment.
What percentage of Gaithersburgers rent, and what percentage of those renters are rent burdened?
About half of Gaithersburg residents are renters, and about half of those are cost burden. And it's a percentage that pretty much mirrors the county's percentage of cost burden renters.
So a fourth of Gaithersburg residents are cost burdened.
Yes.
Cost burden is a relative term. It's relative to your income. The median household income in Gaithersburg is somewhat lower than the median household income in the county as a whole. Are your rents also lower at the same rate than the rest of the county?
In some places, yes, they are. We have a number of sort of older garden apartment buildings in the Old Town area of Gaithersburg that were built in the 1960s. And you can generally find lower rents in those areas. And a lot of that is naturally occurring affordable housing. It's not legislated affordable. There's no need actually to legislate for those older properties. Our impetus for creating our affordable housing ordinance in 2006 was to better distribute affordable housing throughout the city. So we have MPDUs and workforce dwelling unit requirements for any new development in the city. We do have an exemption for Old Town because we have a large proportion of affordable already there. And our goal is to try to distribute it through the city. So we've added a number of legislated, mandated affordable units throughout the city, but we're still looking to do more.
What is the number of MPDU units in the city of Gaithersburg?
It's in the hundreds. I don't know exactly offhand.
Hundreds, not thousands, right?
Yeah, I think it's in the high hundreds. We're adding a few more hundred at Lake Forest whenever that residential will be built. 15% of that will be affordable. We have another project next to Lake Forest of 400 units. 15% of that will be affordable. And actually, we have a project that we're having a public hearing on this week that is currently 192 naturally occurring affordable units, and it's going to be redeveloped into 434. If it's approved, it'll be redeveloped into 434 affordable units, or I should say 75% will be affordable. Why
is the MPDU or this mandated affordability that you just described different from the price control of rent stabilization? How is that different? Because if you have an MPDU and you're saying 15% of all units that are built now are going to be sold at a lower rate, all that you're doing is you're lowering the rate for those units, and the developer is transferring all the remainder of that cost to the rest of the 85%. MPDU system better than the rent stabilization that you criticize?
Well, I think that question is better addressed to someone in the building community, but I would say it has a lot to do with certainty. We understand 15% of our units are going to be MPDUs or workforce units, and that's sort of a concrete requirement from the city of Gaithersburg, and has been accepted and adopted by the building community since 2006 when we enacted it. The rent stabilization that the county enacted varies from year to year based on what the consumer price index is. As a part of it has vacancy control. Oftentimes for good tenants, landlords allow a good tenant who's been there for a long time to live under market rate. But now you've created an incentive for them not to allow that, because if that person were to leave that unit, the actual control of the price stays with the unit. It's not with the person itself. There's a whole bunch of things that create a level of uncertainty. Our MPDU program doesn't affect the resale value of the building 23 years after it's been built.
But isn't the value of the building depressed by the amount of difference between the MPDU rate and the market rate?
It is, but it's a certain amount. It's a small sort of acceptable amount by that works within the structure of the building development community.
We are making a claim that somehow MPDU impacts can be absorbed, but rent stabilization impacts cannot be absorbed. But we don't know what those numbers really are.
Well, the other uncertainty for the property owners is the other cost factors involved in property management. There's taxes, which, although Gaithersburg, I'm proud to say, has maintained the lowest level of property taxes of any of Maryland's large cities. The county continually is raising taxes. They implemented BEPS, which is requiring buildings renovate. It's requiring them to change from gas to electric, which is a very expensive conversion. These are all well-intentioned laws and regulations, but it adds up. Sometimes inflation's up. In 2022, we had 9% inflation, which would obviously put somebody in Montgomery County's controlled units, would put them kind of underwater, because the max they could raise rents from year over year would be 6%. The MPDU program isn't impacted by any of that. The same risks aren't there.
Do you think vacancy control is the most onerous part of rent stabilization, or is it the 23-year hammer?
If there was a date certain model, if the cap was what was originally proposed, which was 8 or 9% plus CPI, which is more of an anti-gouging level than it is a rent control level, in my opinion. And if there wasn't vacancy control, maybe we wouldn't have asserted ourselves in this process. But when we saw all three of those things happening, we kind of see it as a vice that's going to squeeze out the production of new housing units in Montgomery County and lead to all of these issues.
Well, I would imagine that's an opportunity for Gaithersburg, right? So if there is no building activity in the rest of Montgomery County, I would imagine that everybody that wants to be in Montgomery County is now going to come to Gaithersburg to build. Is that the case?
Yes, investment is continuing in Gaithersburg. And when I talk to people in the development community, they are still bullish on Gaithersburg. They're bullish on Rockville, because Rockville's in the same position as we are. But there's a couple of Gaithersburg or Rockville and Gaithersburg and Rockville, even if you put them together. We're not large enough to have our own housing market. The tax revenue that's generated from new construction in Gaithersburg and Rockville isn't enough to make up for a loss of new construction all countywide.
Maybe so, but if you change your zoning and allowed more, upzoned single-family areas, you would have a lot of land to build on.
We have changed our zoning. In fact, we received a statewide sustainable growth award from the state of Maryland recently based on that project. I'm really proud of our zoning.
Like Arlington, if you took out single family zoning altogether, maybe you would attract all the people that want to be in Montgomery County but can't because, in your view, they are stymied by rent stabilization. And here is Gaithersburg and Rockville presenting a excellent example of where they can build. But I'm not even, I think they are building, but not that much.
We have a lot of investment happening in Gaithersburg. In fact, our pipeline of approved units is about 5,000. I think the county's is like 27,000 or something like that. We've been growing faster than Montgomery County. We are welcoming of new development and have been. And I think you could say the same thing about Rockville. What I hear from the development community these days is that a lot of the capital investment that comes in to make a project work comes from outside the area. And a lot of the financiers look at Montgomery County, they know rent control, and they're not making a distinction with Gaithersburg and Rockville. And so we are essentially getting thrown out with the bathwater.
Seems like you have a marketing problem. Like, you want to distinguish yourself from Montgomery County. If you want to attract the investment, you got to go out and tell the investors that, Gaithersburg, it ain't Montgomery County.
Well, I certainly do. In fact, I was just with a bunch of commercial real estate brokers at JLL, extolling the virtues of Gaithersburg and the fact that we have free parking and that we're debt free and that we're in great shape. But we're talking about people in Singapore. We're talking about people all over the world. It's not, sure, it'd be nice to take that trip and do a roadshow for financiers worldwide. Sure.
My underlying point is that if you are controlling where you can build with your zoning policy, then obviously people that are wanting to build see that there's no space in Gaithersburg to build. What about the prospect of upzoning broadly to allow to offset the consequences that you are decrying for Montgomery County?
I would argue that our zoning is not holding back development in Gaithersburg right now. In fact, we're about to, for the project that we're having the public hearing on this week, that part of that is a rezoning. If we recognize that our zoning is too restrictive and holding back activity in Gaithersburg, we'll take a look at it.
What would you need to see to make that determination?
We would need to hear it from the development community.
Okay. All right. You talked about rent stabilization as a short-term fix and obviously, and the economics of it has always been problematic. The economics of price control is really problematic. But, that just says that economics somehow trumps politics. And on this show, one of the points we make is that economics almost never trumps the king of all human activity. So you are a politician. What is the argument here to be made that you should not, in fact, respond to public demand, maybe rent stabilization, which may be antithetical to economic theory, but nevertheless they want it because they are hurting. People are hurting. What is the problem? John Maynard Keynes, the great economist, said, in the long run, we are all dead.
Thank you for brightening up this conversation. Look, if we want to talk about theory, the theory of representative democracy, theoretically, we're elected to make decisions for the long-term good of the jurisdiction. I love our advocates. I came up as an advocate before I was ever in elected office. And the luxury of being an advocate is that you can focus on your issue and you don't have to consider things holistically and how they impact the long-term health of your city, your jurisdiction. I take my responsibility seriously. It is very difficult at times when you're at the dais and there's 100 people in front of you and they're trying to get you to make the wrong decision. And it's my job to explain to them, to to listen to them, to consider what they're saying, and to make what I think is the best decision for the jurisdiction.
If you're just thinking about the long term and saying, let's make the immediate sacrifices necessary for our long-term health, that sounds great. But in practice, what that happens is leaders lose the elections over that. Don't forget, Winston Churchill lost an election after winning World War II.
Who knows? Maybe I'll lose this election.
So do you think if you were to be reelected, that it would be a ratification of your position, particularly on rent stabilization?
Yes, I do. I do. And it's largely not because I'm hearing a lot of outcry in Gaithersburg for rent stabilization, but my challenger in this election is proactively supportive of rent stabilization and saying this part of her platform. So the residents, the voters here have a real choice. And so, yes, I will look at that as a ratification.
County Executive Mark Elrich, who is a great proponent of rent stabilization, has been reelected. Is that a ratification of rent stabilization at the county level?
Maybe,
if your election is a repudiation of rent stabilization in Gaithersburg, is the re-election of Mark Elrich at the county level a validation of rent stabilization at the county level as a political idea?
I don't know. And the reason I say it is because, well, I agree, Mark Elrich has been a big proponent of rent stabilization. There are there's a whole realm of other issues that Mark Elrich deals with as county executive. There's decades of history that Mark Elrich has with his constituency, cultivating it.
As do you.
I don't think when the voters of Gaithersburg go to the polls or vote by mail in this case, and they vote for Judd Ashman, it's largely about rent stabilization. I think it is about the values that have led me to my position on rent stabilization, but it's about a lot more. So, but yes, in this case, it is a little bit more in the fore in this election because my challenger is making it so. But there's just a lot of history with me, and so there's a lot of reasons people could be voting for me.
So, how important is really housing affordability in Gaithersburg? If people are balancing with 17 other things, that's probably, and 17 years of history, 18 years of history.
Well, I think right now it's an important issue. I think right now, dealing with the challenge of the federal government and the layoffs and the reduction in grants and the immigration enforcement without due process, I think those are all big issues too. And people are looking for an experienced leader, and I have a lot of experience. I bring that. But I think housing affordability is a big problem that people recognize. I saw the poll in the Banner a couple of weeks ago that had the ranking of different issues in Montgomery County. That was the top one. I think Gaithersburg's no exception. We see this as a big problem. The way that we address it is to try to bring about more supply, try to foster that. But for people who are experiencing distress now, we have emergency rental assistance. Our community services offices helped dozens. I think the number is like 82, avert 82 evictions directly, avert in the last year, avert 50 some odd utility disconnections. Like we're here to help too, and we have the Financial Empowerment Center and WorkSource to help try to lift people up.
Is rent control in your view, rent stabilization in your view, a good policy at any time?
I'm skeptical of it at any time. During the actual state of emergency in lockdown during the pandemic, we limited rent increases during that time. I'm not sure I would have voted for that in our system. The mayor sets the agenda but doesn't have the votes. The city council has the votes. Had I been a city council member, I'm not sure I would have voted for it, but I understand the nature of that emergency situation. But for the most part, I think I have this vision of Alice in Wonderland and walking into a room with a bunch of cakes that are bad for you, but have the sign "Eat me" on them. It's a tempting thing to do with poor consequences.
You said that Gaithersburg has a variety of housing types.
Yes.
And you described the difference as constructed around neighborhoods. So you said different neighborhoods have different types of housing. That implies some level of economic segregation. In effect, what you're saying is that if you have a certain economic class, you live in this one neighborhood, and if you have a different economic class, and you live in a different neighborhood. One of the big success stories in housing in your city is the mixed use format in Kentlands. Given that success, how do you see this economic segregation that is kind of present in housing in your description?
I'm not sure I agree. Yeah, you've interpreted my description in this way. For the last 30 some odd 35 years since Kentlands came about, we've mostly been doing approving neighborhoods that have a mix of housing types. So for example, in Parklands, there's single families, there's towns, there's condos, there's and next door in Spectrum there are apartments. In the new Lake Forest project that we approved last year, there will be townhouses, there'll be multifamily apartments, and then there'll be what we call gap housing or missing middle. Some people refer to it, duplexes, triplexes, 2/2 type housing. That'll all be together in one neighborhood. So there are occasions where it's a small project that they're all townhouses or something. But for larger projects, it's been a long time since we've had all one housing type. And I agree. It is our goal, as it was with our affordable housing ordinance that we passed in 2006. It's our goal to have mixed income all over the city.
You talked about, conditions in rental housing as a consequence of rent stabilization. Do you think rental housing conditions in Gaithersburg are significantly better than those in the county as a consequence of rent stabilization?
I don't know. I saw a recent report that some of the proponents of rent stabilization seized onto that says that the county's rent stabilization has led to better conditions in those apartments. And I don't know one way or another.
Well, Council Member Will Juando says that because he says that there is provision in the rent stabilization law to make that happen.
Yes. Now, to me, we have a very active code enforcement service in the city of Gaithersburg, and I don't know why code enforcement in the county was dependent upon rent stabilization. They should have been doing it anyway. But so I haven't personally looked at reporting in terms of conditions of county buildings, but I know that we take code enforcement very seriously in Gaithersburg. And I feel like the condition of our buildings and rental units is very good.
How many inspectors do you have?
I think we have 6.
And this is for not just for new building, this is for rentals?
Yes.
So 6 just for rentals?
I think it's 6 overall. Our inspection cadence is that every 2 years we have to inspect every rental unit. Inspections office is very active. I'm just talking about after the fact, after something's been constructed, our code enforcement there. We certainly have more code enforcement who are looking at buildings as they're being constructed and making sure everything is safe and done according to plan.
Do you have other housing affordability measures you are thinking about for Gaithersburg going to the future?
Sure. Well, I mean, as I mentioned, our accessory dwelling unit, allowing it in all of our single family neighborhoods by right, I think is a step in the right direction. I think our adoption of gap housing, the missing middle, is a step in the right direction. So we're moving, I mean, partially by necessity because we don't have the green space, we don't have the room to put single family detached anymore. It'd be a very rare situation. We're definitely moving away from that and more to the higher density, which I think will help.
Jed Ashman, good luck in the campaign.
Thank you very much. Appreciate you having me on.
That's incumbent Gaithersburg Mayor Judd Ashman speaking on rent stabilization and housing affordability, a key demand made by his opponent, Tiffany Kelly. You can find more about Ashman at votejudd.com. Tiffany Kelly's interview with me is also out alongside this interview. Please look at our library. Music for this episode comes from once Kensington resident Adam Barbrau. If you want to share your music on the show or know someone else who might want to, please email us at producer@ihppod.org. I hope you will listen, like, and share the show as we bring you stories about politics close to you and to your home. See you next time.